with Al McFarlane. On Monday mornings, we try to bring together leaders of the community, talking about the community, talking about our issues, our ideas, our voices, our strengths, and the challenges we face as well. I'm pleased today to have as guest Adwa uh, Adwa Pugh. She's the board chair of the Jordan Area Community Council, Jack it's called. And Jack has a wonderful program that is responsive to the challenges we're looking at right now in our community. What are they? Obviously, we're dealing with COVID-19. Obviously, we're dealing with the impact, the trauma of the death, the murder of brother George Floyd. Obviously, we're dealing with the economic impact, both from COVID-19 shutting our businesses down and from businesses being stressed. In some cases, closed, burned, in some cases looted because of the uprising, the anger that came out of communities uh, at the in response to this injustice that everybody was feeling. So we want to talk about that today. We've invited some others to join us as well. They may join us in the course of the conversation, but I want to begin with Adwa Pugh. Adwa, thank you for being here. Good morning, and how are you?
Good morning, and I am very well. Thank you.
Let's
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Thanks to Jack. Let me say, first of all, so people know it, this is a disclosure. Insight exists. Insight News exists because of Jack, because of
Mm.
Hawthorne and Willard Homewood Organization. We started this newspaper, this business, almost 30 years ago. Maybe it's more than that now. It's maybe 1974. What is that? 76? Long time
Oh,
ago.
40? Is that
40
40
years
years?
ago, right? That's when
Mm.
we started it. But we started it with the advertising support of
Mm.
Jack, of Hawthorne, and of Willard Homewood and Northside Residents Redevelopment Council. So I'm indebted and grateful to the Jack community for launching this entrepreneur. Now, with that, give people first of all a update. Jack 101. Talk about the organization first of all.
Well, from where I sit, Jack wouldn't be Jack without Kathy Span.
Mhm.
Kathy Span is the executive director. Andrea Huber is her assistant, and the board. We support Kathy Span and her visions. And so, um, Jack does the safety meetings. We have our board meetings, and we have housing meetings. But with everything that is going on, Kathy Span always wants to go out and do something different. What else can we do? And how can we help? Because everybody helps in their own way. Everybody has their own gifts and talents. Now, some people may be fine with protesting. That may work for them. But then other people have other gifts. And so what we just talked about and discussed is how can Jack help? And so what we came up with together as a unit is healing. How can we focus on healing? Not just for current situations, but because Black people suffer from historical trauma, we deal with that and what's going on now because it's all connected and related.
Let's talk about that. So you got a formal program called Healing Stories. Talk
Yes.
about Healing Stories. What is it? What does it mean? And what does it do?
So not only am I the board chair for Jordan Area Community Council, but I also am the founder and executive director of an organization called Off the Blue Couch. And I can get back to Off the Blue Couch, but let's talk about healing stories. So healing, one of the initiatives that Off the Blue Couch has is healing circles. Um, and we all know what a healing circle is. Traditionally, it comes from the indigenous community where they form a circle and they have powwows and different things. And that their community itself comes together to heal each other, heal itself. And this is the same premise. And so healing stories is also the stories is not just stories, but it's an acronym for sharing the truth about reality in every sentence. Because as individuals, what we have to do is control the narrative, which means control our own stories. So we can't allow anybody else to be our voice. We have to be the voice of ourselves. And so to identify, to get other people to understand what it is that each of us are feeling internally, because healing begins with you. And when you think about going to therapy, that's what therapists do. You go to the therapist, you talk to them, and then they give you tools to use to help improve yourself. Because how can you help others if it doesn't start with you?
Hmm. And so, talk about your organization, Off the Blue Couch, and how Off the Blue Couch then has become a resource for Jack in creating this Healing Stories initiative.
Off the Blue Couch started because, first of all, I'm a recovered drug user. Um, and I identify as a recovered drug user. Um, and some people identify as addicts. I don't. I, I realized that I wasn't addicted. I have addicted personality, but I wasn't addicted to the drug. The drug was not the cause. My issues was the cause.
Hmm.
The drug was a cover to help me deal with what I was going through. So I've been clean from drugs and alcohol for 16 years,
Oh, congratulations.
and I'm grateful for that. I'm truly grateful for that. And healing off the blue couch gave me a platform to be able to tell my story. But not only have I been recovered from drugs and alcohol, because drugs wasn't my drug, was not the initial drug of choice. Alcohol was my drug of choice.
Mm.
Alcohol clicked to the using of the smoking the cocaine piece. So they
Hmm.
became one and the same for me. So
Hmm.
I couldn't do one without the other.
Hmm.
But in that, I had to understand that the drug was the substance, the issues lied in me.
Ah.
So I was working towards figuring that out, and my relationship with God helped me with that.
Hmm.
But what happened to me in 2017 was the bigger catalyst to the healing piece for me.
Hmm.
So in 2017, May 15th, 2017, which is my son's birthday, I died for 10 minutes. I went into cardiac arrest,
Hmm.
and God saw fit to bring me back. So I had what's called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy.
Hmm.
And they had to shock my heart 3 times, one for the Father, one for the Son, one for the Holy Spirit,
Oh
and
boy.
brought me back. God saw fit to bring me back. So
Was that
that
during drug use or drug
no,
episodes?
no, 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 no. I've been clean. I've been clean for 13 years,
Okay.
but I suffer from chronic pain.
Okay.
And so as suffering from chronic pain, because I suffer from chronic pain, I wasn't using pain meds at the time
Mm.
because of my drug use. I was afraid to use
Mm.
any type of pain meds. So when you go to the doctor, the only thing they throw opioids at you, because what people don't know, after Tylenol and ibuprofen, there is nothing else but an opioid. Right? People, I learned that. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was going to the doctor to get shots. I was going to the hospital to get shots on what I call crisis pain days. And when the humidity and the dew point is high, my body, everything on me hurts except for my head. I don't have a headache, but I feel like my body feels like I have a toothache. So on that particular day, I went to North Memorial to get a Toradol shot. Toradol is like taking 5 ibuprofens, but in liquid form.
Mm.
And it didn't happen that way. I never did get it, and I ended up going into cardiac arrest. And I'm gonna just leave that right there because that could be a whole story in itself.
Sure.
But when I came back, because I
Mm-hmm.
have here, I
Mm-hmm.
have a name tag bar brand, so I have a defibrillator. So I had to learn how, because what I had was Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. Takotsubo cardiomyopathy is not stress in your life; it's stress in the moment.
Mm.
So what happened was is I was already stressed. I was already stressed, and the lack of being heard tipped me over the top. That's my belief.
Uh,
So I have to had to learn how to calm, calm myself. So I
mm-hmm.
had to learn tools. So I went to therapy, and therapy is taboo for us in the black community because
Mm-hmm.
we don't want the white folks in our business.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I went to therapy to learn tools, and my doctor introduced me to a platform called Healing Collaborative, which only dealt with people having medical conditions. So once I did Healing Stories Collaborative, and that was only dealing with medical issues. So I'm talking to them and I'm like, what about historical trauma in the Black community and people of color? We need to talk about this. People need to be able to get it out because that's the root of what's going on with us. This was years ago.
Mhm.
So they didn't. They still focus on that. So I'm like, okay, Off the Blue Couch is going to do this and deal with historical and current trauma. But I had to start with dealing with it myself in order for me to be better. See, what I've come to learn is as there's a place and a time, and the Bible talks about it for everything. And I needed a time to heal for myself because I can't overreact in every situation. And that's what I was doing. Um, it makes you think. And so what we have to do sometimes is we have to pause and take a breath because they teach you breathing techniques in therapy too. Because what we do as people is we take breath for granted
Mhm.
that it's just owed to us. It's not.
Mhm.
And it's all rooted from historical stuff and the epigenetics and this whole big thing. But one thing you could do is identify what's going on with yourself and what you need to do for you to make you a better person and utilize the tools that's there and stop and take a breath. Because I had to learn with, if you just think about it, if you angry and you in your car driving, right?
Mhm.
You miss your turn. And you be like, I missed my turn. You know why? Because you're not thinking rationally because you're upset. So you have to stop, take a pause and breathe and say, okay, wait a minute. What do I need? And that's what Healing Stories is. Is in the midst of everything that's happening right now with George Floyd and the backlash of George Floyd, because George Floyd's death was the catalyst to things that needed to happen all the time.
Right.
But in that, as people, what we do is we keep going and we keep going and keep going. But this is an opportunity for us to pause and take a breath and
Mhm.
do self-care and see what's going on with us as an individual, to identify that, to be intentional in our behaviors and identify what's going on with us. Because sometimes what's going on with us, we put it off on other stuff. That's why we keep going and going and going. This is to take a pause, take a breath, and allow us to continue to move forward.
So, Adwa, as you're speaking, I'm just feeling this vibration, this energy, and you've put your finger on it in reference to George Floyd. You're saying, breathe, stop. And he's reminding us because he's saying, I can't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
I can't breathe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's the story that you're saying that we all have to recognize and realize and do something about right now in this moment and in
Mm-hmm.
every moment for health. I happened to listen to another show on a public radio a few days ago. I don't remember who it was, but the takeaway from the show was that we underrate and we take for granted what you just said, breathing. And
Mm-hmm.
that breathing itself is probably the best exercise we can do if
Mm-hmm.
we learn to breathe deeply,
Mm-hmm.
breathe with intentionality, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
not just, taking a breath and not being aware or conscious of it, but
Mm-hmm.
if you can develop and fine tune an
Mm-hmm.
awareness of the power of every single breath and
Mm-hmm.
breathe with intention with
Mm-hmm.
every inhale and every exhalation, then
Mm-hmm.
you are getting the best possible exercise you could have. And you use
Mm-hmm.
that to build on other exercises that move your body, your mind, and your spirit toward
Mm-hmm.
health and healthfulness. That's what I've been hearing. So it's wonderful to have this conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Al
Because
McFarlane.
can I say this, Al,
Go ahead.
please?
Go right ahead.
Because what happens is when you breathe, release carbon dioxide and you breathe in oxygen, which helps your heart and your body function and gets to your brain. Because without oxygen to your brain, guess what? You brain dead.
That's right. Yeah, that's it. That's good. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane, our Monday edition. And we use this to connect with members and leaders in community to talk about community concerns. We have the fortune and the pleasure to be connecting with the board chair for Jordan Area Community Council. They call it JACC, JACC. And JACC is one of the historic leadership neighborhood organizations in North Minneapolis, led by board chair Ardua Pugh, and managing director, CEO, Kathy Span, a powerhouse in her own right, and by anybody and everybody's estimation, a person who's alive and on fire all the time, right?
All the time.
All the time. So glad to have you here. So you all are doing an event. Let me put this slide up. I'm going to share this slide. And we can talk about this event again. I want to come back and talk about you some more.
Okay.
I enjoy telling stories and listening to stories, and you're the perfect person because you're all about stories, right? And the power of stories. So this is going to be wonderful. Let me share this with you first. Let me pull my screen up, and you can talk about the event. So I'm going to do a share screen, and now we should have. Let's see. I'm thinking we have.
Now you got your grandson.
That's the wrong one. Stop share. Okay, let me get the right. I thought I had this ready before, but just a second. Now I've got to find it again. Let's see. So the technology is still new to me, but it's amazing what we can do with this technology.
You said you was gonna do stop share.
Well, is the grandson still there?
Nope, I don't see anything now.
Just us right now.
Yeah.
I'm doing screen share, but I'm looking for the actual item on my desktop.
I have one right here.
You know how to share it? Can you share it?
No, I'm saying I have it right here.
Okay, just hold it up. You mean? Okay.
Yeah.
That works. That's fine. That works. Yeah, go ahead and hold it up.
Until you can figure it out. I could do that if you like.
Why don't you do that? And I'm gonna try to figure out how to actually share it because we didn't practice it.
Yeah, you did.
And but talk about the event again.
Okay. So, in talking to Kathy again, can't do anything without talking to Kathy Span, because Kathy Span knew that there was something else that needed to be done.
I have it up. I think it's sharing.
Yep, you have it. Yep, and it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Your grandson is not there.
Okay.
And so we decided that on Thursdays we didn't want to do one. And because of COVID, there is you have to still social distance. And so in the ordinance that has been passed due to COVID, you're only supposed to have a gathering of 10 people or more, and we have totally been violating that. But COVID is real, and I want to respect that and follow directions. So we can't just do one. Mm-hmm. So what we decided is to have, for right now, and we'll add them if needed, but for the next 4 Thursdays from 5:30 to 7, that we will have healing stories in Jordan Park, healing circles in Jordan Park. And it's a free event, but you have to wear your mask, understanding that healing begins with you. And so from every Thursday from June 11th to July 2nd, we will be in Jordan Park from 5:30 to 7. Wear your mask. It's a free event, but you have to register on Eventbrite. So the links are on the Jack Facebook page, the Off the Blue Couch Facebook page, my Facebook page, and I believe it's going to be on Nextdoor, and it's on I Am Northside Facebook page. So we're asking everybody to register because we don't want to be overcrowded with people. Mm-hmm. So, and then we can keep count on how many people is invited. And then if it get filled up that week, then come the next week. We're going to keep it going so we can still be mindful and intentional of following ordinances. Because one of the things that I feel like is, how can we ask for rules and laws and want to follow if we won't follow them ourselves?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So tell me how that works then. A person comes, they register, they come, and you invite them to tell their story. What is that like? What do you say? How do they respond? How does the story unfold?
So we're going to start with cleansing. So we're going to start with smudging. And you smudging is, you know what smudging is? It's
No, I
the
don't.
indigenous. Oh, I'm sorry.
No
So it's
idea.
the indigenous. It's the indigenous. I'm looking. I thought the. I thought the shell was right here. So smudging is an indigenous tradition where you have sage. You burn sage, and you cleanse yourself from head to toe.
Mm-hmm.
Each individual person, and I love it. It is so freeing, and it works. It clears the space. It does.
I've been to an event. I was at Mystic Lake, I think, when they dedicated that. And I think Dennis Crooks was there. He was the president or chief of the Mystic Lake Dakota community. And they were
Mm.
dedicating that facility, and they had someone walk through the crowd with a handful of sage smoke and kind of
Yep.
was smoking the
It was
room.
in the
Kind of,
shell. It
yeah.
was in the shell. Yep.
Okay, so that's smudging.
Yep. That's called smudging,
Okay.
and it relieves the tension. So it's everybody doing that. We also have one where you can because it starts with the breathing. So it's the becoming aware of yourself. So you use that, or you can use lotion, stress lotion, but it's all about the relaxing, like yoga almost, and the smelling and the breathing in and becoming aware and the breathing out and becoming one with yourself to open up yourself and open up your mind to be able to receive and release what it is that you need to do. And it's also and it's kind of looking for direction and what you want to say, and it just gives you a moment
Mm-hmm.
to care for yourself and become one with you, God, who your higher power, whatever. You understand what I'm saying? That's how it opens up. And then we go into the plan is to go into it for those that want to talk. And I was thinking about because it has to be a time frame because it's only an hour and a half. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought about the time allotment, and we had said 7 to 10 minutes, but I thought about the limit is going to be 8 minutes and 48 seconds.
Uh, there we go. Yep. And
And then we'll close with the exercise. We'll have journals and give tools to and of course there are going to be guidelines and rules, and we pass those out at the beginning because we have to be mindful and respectful of not interrupting people but giving them their platform to control the narrative of their own story.
that notion of 8 minutes and with 43 seconds, is that what it is?
48, I think.
48 seconds, yeah. That's powerful. I watched Reverend Sharpton and the service they had here.
Mhm.
And then, my wife and I stood and sort of held hands and hugged while we watched that 8 minutes and 48-second period. It seemed like forever. And that was the
Mhm.
point, is for us to be mindful of how a person could be with his knee on your neck for that long, and
Mhm.
how life will leave you as it did with George Floyd. And so to have the whole world now become conscious and aware of 8 minutes and 48 seconds is a
Mhm.
wonderful idea. And here you are finding another application using that as a time frame
Mhm.
for how people can share. That's
Mhm.
brilliant, I think. A few minutes ago, too, before we started, they were members of Nancy Pelosi and members of the House were
Mhm.
all, and members of the Senate were all wearing, Democrats wearing kente cloths and having some discussion about
Mhm.
the George Floyd issue, murder, and
Mhm.
the reform that's needed. And
Mhm.
what they said is that they intended to, during this program, take a pause for silence for 8 minutes and 48 seconds. I think that's a great
Mhm.
thing. It's a great idea. And I think the
Mhm.
more we think that way and do that, it burns this knowledge into our minds and spirits and lets us reflect
Mhm.
upon this injustice and
Mhm.
just the horrific nature of this murder that we're now traumatized by. So let me talk to you, Adwa, about your story again. You
Mhm.
started with that. I often
Mhm.
ask my guests to talk about who they are and why they have become who they are. And when I ask the question, I generally am thinking about, who are your ancestors to the degree that you know. Where's your mom, your great grands, great great grands? How much do you know about your history, and how much are you aware of what the genealogy is that flows into you that creates this moment? And I also talk about the my sense that the moment that you and I are in is actually the gateway to eternity, that
Mhm.
everything else passes through this moment. So
Mhm.
in that spirit, I ask you, who are you? Where have you come from? And where are you going?
Okay, so my great grandmother, great grandmother, is a was a freed slave. So that if she was a freed slave, that means she was a slave.
Mhm.
And then my family um, moved to Cairo, Illinois, and then from Cairo, Illinois, the first place in Chicago where a black family could own homes was in the Morgan Park and Maple Park area. So my family moved. My grandmother and her children. She had 13 children. She birthed 13 children, but only 9 lived. And my grandmother is the oldest girl of the 9.
Mhm.
Um, and I grew up in Chicago. I lived in Chicago first time I heard about Minnesota was I was 17. I moved here and I went back and forth a couple different times. But I'm an only child. And my mother's the only child. Um, and so that had its challenges. Um, and my mother, what I've come to learn about parenting, and then my mother is that if parents raise you with the information that they have.
Mhm.
If the information is limited, that's what you get. Is it good or bad? No, it's just the information that we have. And I'm grateful that the foundation that I have and my mother, that I have that. I was looking because I was the only child. I didn't have any brothers and sisters. I felt like I didn't have nobody to relate to. So um, I had I turned to alcohol. I drank I started drinking real early. I want to say I was 10 when I started drinking alcohol.
Really? 10?
Mhm.
Okay.
I was
Is that
sneaking.
because it was around,
No,
or?
yeah, but no. I started smoking weed, marijuana when I was 10. I started drinking when I was 12, and I started smoking cigarettes when I was 13
Okay.
because that's what I saw.
Okay.
And so I want to be cool, be like everybody else. And I was suffering from pain myself because I'm an only child. So everybody else had brothers and sisters, and I didn't.
Mhm.
And then we had other kind of little issues in our family. Um, so to cover that up, I drank alcohol, which that led to me smoking rock cocaine.
Mhm.
I started smoking rock cocaine in my 20s. I was 22, I want to say. And that what my intention was never to get hooked.
Mhm.
I was just messing around. And me and my cousin had a conversation. Marsha Warfield, who played Roz on Night Court,
Mhm.
that's my cousin.
Oh.
And we were talking about drug use. And she said, don't nobody want to grow up and say they want to be a drug addict. It's like walking into a bar in 1979 and walking out 20 years later and saying, I'm ready to go home now.
Mhm.
Some people don't walk out, some people die in it.
Mhm.
But what I knew is that I was sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mhm.
And so I never wanted to do it. Like I said, I never wanted to use in the first place. I was just stuck and didn't know how to get out. And I sat there for 15 years on that bar stool.
Mhm.
Figuratively, I sat on that bar stool for 15 years. And I said, enough is enough. And one day, and I would pray and I would ask God to release me from what I was going through. So now I'm stupid now. Listen to me clear. So remember I said drugs and alcohol went hand in hand for me.
Mhm.
So I'm praying and I'm asking God every time I pick up that pipe, I'm hitting the pipe and I'm praying, God, please deliver me from this, please. And he's taking it away. So I started throwing up because I'm drinking this alcohol and I'm throwing up. And after about a year, my insides was raw from constantly going smoking, drinking, and bringing it back up. It going to my insides was raw, burning. And then it hit me, dummy. You asking God to release you from it. He's releasing you, but you keep putting it back in, stupid.
Mm. Wake up.
Stop.
Wake up.
And my insides was raw.
Mhm.
I couldn't drink pop. I still to this day don't drink pop because of that. Because of all the regurgitation, it was tearing on my insides. So I realized that it wasn't. So I called at the time. God for me was on my youngest daughter's grandmother's balcony
Mhm.
in the space between the trees. So I called my daughter's grandmother.
Tell me that
And
again. Say that again.
this
Uh,
oh
God was
for me,
what?
God was God was on my granddaughter's balcony, or my daughter's grandmother's balcony.
Hmm.
That's what God was for me in the space between the trees.
Okay. Okay. That's what
And
I thought you
so,
said. That's what
yeah,
that's what I thought you said. Okay.
that's what I said.
Okay.
And so, but it was always a space between the trees is where I talk to God. So
Hmm.
what I realized is that when I looked in the places that I had lived in my life, in the space between the trees, it was always a space between the trees. And that's where I sat
Hmm.
when I wanted to talk to God. So at that time, it was at my daughter's grandmother's house. In my past, like, in the places I lived, it was in my house, it was a space in
Hmm.
between the trees where I talked to God.
Hmm.
So God was in the space between the trees. He wasn't here, he was there.
Okay. Got it.
So I called my daughter's grandmother and I asked her to come and pick me up. I didn't tell her why. I just asked her to come and pick me up. And the first place I went was on her balcony because I needed to talk to God.
Hmm.
And I stayed there for a week before I told her why I was there. And when I told her, she said, "Well, that's good," because she knew I used drugs.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so she said, "Well, you can stay as long as you like." I said, "Okay." So on the 10th day, God said, "You can go home now." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I went in and I told her, I said, "I'm ready to go home." She said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." So when I got home, I had a drawer. Everybody has a junk drawer in their house.
Hmm.
So in my house, my junk drawer was in my bedroom. And this drawer, I had been wanting to clean out this drawer for 3 years, and I never did. But that day, that was the first thing I did. And I was going through that drawer, and I found mail. I found all kind of stuff. And I was tearing stuff up. I found pipes. I found pushers. I found chore boy. I found all the tools that I used to get out. And I took those pipes, put them in sandwich bags, and stepped on them. That's when I knew that God was working, because I was able to do that without a problem.
Hmm.
And now I started cleaning my house. But what I realized after I did all of that is that I couldn't clean it away. I had to get out of that space because that's where I got high.
Hmm.
So I talked to and it was all around me. So I talked to my landlord, and after some struggles, he allowed me to get out my lease, and I was able to move. And from then on, I'm going to say it has not been easy, but it has been easier. And once I got past the 3 month mark, and then the year mark, and then the 5 year mark, at that time, I was being delivered from it, because even when I tell my story right now, I feel ill
Hmm.
in my stomach. I feel ill anytime I think about drinking alcohol or smoking crack or using drugs. Now, what people do what you do. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about me.
Hmm.
Is that it makes me ill. And so in my house, I had a blue couch. That's where I got high.
Hmm.
So when I ended up going to school, I'm going to fast forward. Started going to school in January 2012. And I went to North Hennepin Community College, and I did well. I was commencement speaker. I was valedictorian. I was commencement speaker. I won all awards, all the scholarships. I rocked that school. Not alone. I had a support system. And I talked about telling my story, was talking about off the blue couch.
Hmm.
That led to me continuing to tell my story. How I was in a NACC magazine on how I got off the blue couch. I wanted to start a nonprofit some years ago, and it was going to be a transitional housing for helping women called A Calm Place to Be. But I realized that I'm not equipped to do none of that. That's in learning yourself. So then I said, after the me dying and God bringing seeing fit to bring me back, I started a nonprofit off the blue couch in November of 2017, and that was to help promote healing and dealing with current and historical trauma in different ways to make that happen.
What a wonderful and powerful story. I'm so glad to meet you, to know you, to talk
Thank
to
you.
you. So glad to hear your testimony. This is
Thank you.
inspiring and encouraging, and that's what we need. That's the power of a story right there. You just laid it out, and it's a wonderful thing. And so, how do you navigate where we are as a community right now? We were dealing with, well, see, Jordan and Hawthorne, North Minneapolis, we've been dealing with the opioid crisis,
Yep, I'm a part of
having
that
meetings
too.
around that. So that's one issue.
Mhm.
We, before that, were dealing with the question of gang violence and youth gangs, especially in Jordan. Jordan neighborhood was a center of a lot of activity for a long time.
Mhm.
Then we went from there to dealing with COVID-19, right?
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
COVID-19 was set in a backdrop of historical health disparities and
Mhm.
other social indicators, they call them, I think. Not only is there disparity in health outcomes, there's a disparity in education outcomes for Black people, a
Mhm.
disparity in home ownership and wealth, a
Mhm.
disparity in business, a disparity in access to capital for businesses.
Mhm.
And so we've got this whole ecosystem that places us at a disadvantage. And that inside of the historical trauma that our
Mhm.
country refuses to address, and that is
Mhm.
the original sin of the
Mhm.
enslavement of
Mhm.
Black and brown bodies. And the
Mhm.
country refuses to discuss that, to look at it, and to
Mhm.
admit its
Mhm.
role historically, or to admit that today is inextricably bound to the
Mhm.
yesterday, and that the
Mhm.
yesterday was the scene of the crime, and
Mhm.
therefore the scene of the crime, scene of the crime has never disappeared. It's still the scene of the
It-
crime,
That's
and
right.
we are still the victims of it. And
Yes.
all the things we experience in dysfunction, malfunction, I think, in things that sociologists will say are imperfections or in us, are simply reflections of a systemic
Mm.
arrangement that is
Mm.
designed to have us believe that we are the problem while
And
the
we're not.
problem walks around saying, oh, we're so lucky.
Mm.
Isn't
Mm.
America great? You know? And
Right.
so, but now we are voicing our
Mhm.
point of view. I think
Mhm.
it's a wonderful thing. So I say all that to ask you, how do
Mhm.
you see on the community level us navigating our way through the horrific experience, the 8 minutes and 49 seconds that we all watched on social media, and
Mhm.
and that as a horror in and of itself for that
Mhm.
one human being. That's number one, but that is also symbolic of our entire existence
Mhm.
in this country. How do we navigate that from your point of view? Where are we and where do we go?
I think the first thing is for us to identify our roles because everybody has different gifts and talents that they have. So we want to, okay, first, let's understand that change and transition is two separate things. We always say we want change, we want change. Off the Blue Couch has a whole workshop about it. The difference between change and transition. Change is immediate. Transition is what we're going through now. We keep saying we want change, we want change. No, we want transition. We have to identify that first, because once we understand the definition and the power of words,
Hmm.
then we're doing something. So that's first. Then we have to understand that everybody has a gift and a talent that is different. Some people protest. Some people work behind the scenes and putting things together. Some people have to plan. Some people have to work on data. Some people, we have to have all these different moving parts in order for us to come together. One person is not the voice for the whole Black community. Because here's the deal: is that all of us feel, as Black people, we all feel the foot on our necks because we're Black people. But there's different levels of that feeling. The other thing is that because of based on our geographical location in which we were raised, we all have a different view and a different skew. So we have to be silent and breathe in order to be able and open our ears, to be able to open our ears and mind to be able to hear what the other person is saying. And what we do as people, we talk over each other. Instead of, we don't talk to be heard, we talk to talk. So we have to get to a point where we can start hearing each other, which again, it goes back to the learning techniques in order to be able to breathe, because that's what started this. Like you said, him not being able to breathe. But if we don't breathe ourselves and allow time to hear other people and listen to what they're saying, we're ultimately doing to ourselves, to each other in our own community, what we're asking the white people not to do to us.
Hmm.
So we have to be able to come together as a unit and understand there's different point of view, worldviews, be able to breathe, listen, and take that and come up with something that will work. Because what works in Jordan ain't gonna work in Hawthorne. But if the foundation is laid, then each community can build upon that foundation to make what works in their community. We have to do that. And this is not something that's gonna happen overnight. It's all gonna be a process. And if we don't do something to that effect, we're gonna get in each other's way, and we're going to get in our own way, and we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot when an ant is crawling up our leg. And that's just the truth.
So let me close with this. Let me ask you to look in your mind's eye and give me a picture of what you see about the future. Here's what I think you're going to say. Now I could be wrong, but I'm trying to pick up this conversation. I think you're going to say something like, "The future is actually right now." That you'll acknowledge the presence of this moment as the ingredient. Whatever we're doing right now is the core ingredient for any possibility for any future. So that's why the moment is very important. There is no
Mm-hmm.
future without an
Mm-hmm.
acknowledgement of what we have, what we are, who we are, where we are, and what we're doing right now. But
Mm-hmm.
let's say, let's look at intent and desire. What do you envision for our people 5, 10, 100 years from now? 100 years after you and I have left this plane of existence, what's the legacy and what's the potential?
That the system in which we know is different. If we can't rebuild, okay, the Constitution, yes, it's a beautiful work of art, but it does not fit the time in which we live right now. Documents like that have to be a living document. And if it's not a living document, then we take what happened then and apply it to now. And that's why it's not working. So what we have to do, I believe, is because what happens now, like you said, is going to affect our future. The decisions that we make now, just like the decisions that they made then, is affecting us now. It's going to continue to repeat itself. We have to rebuild the system that we know.
Mhm.
And in order for that to happen, it has to be several voices at the table willing to hear each other and listen to put that together. If not, everything is going to fall apart. I'm actually afraid I'm gonna be honest.
Mhm.
I'm actually afraid of what the future holds. If we don't start hearing and listening to one another and taking a moment to breathe and going from one thing to the next, I'm actually afraid. But what I would like for us to do is to try to start healing. Not come, you don't have to come to our healing circle, but go to somebody's healing circle. Somebody to come and identify within yourself what it is that makes you you, and how is that being put into the world, because we have to be intentional on the way we treat people and people see us. And if that doesn't happen, I'm afraid of what the future is going to be. If we try to work together and not grandstand, I guess,
Mhm.
if we work together to think about what's best for everyone in the community as a whole, I think we'll be on to something. That's what I think.
Audrey, I agree with you that healing comes from sharing the truth of our reality
In
in
every sense.
every sentence. Sharing the truth of our reality in every sentence. That says so much. It says that everything you say, every breath you emit and that you take is critical, important, necessary. And what you must find the courage to do is to share the truth of our reality in every sentence. Every word you say, every thought you have, tell the truth.
Be
Listen,
intentional. Be
this is
intentional.
this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane, my Monday session. And it's a session that I bring community elders and activists and leaders and neighbors in just to talk about what's on our minds and to have what I call robust conversations. This is certainly fitting that bill. I'm so grateful to the neighbors and friends and leaders at JAC, Jordan Area Community Council, Kathy Spann for her leadership and her work and her team, and for you, Adwa Pugh, for being the board chair and for this initiative that you all are launching, that Jack is launching. It starts this Thursday, June 11th, and goes every Thursday till July 2nd. It's at Jordan Park. Jordan Park is at 2927 Irving Avenue North on the north side here. It's from 5 o'clock to 7 p.m. It's a free event, but outdoors event, but masks are required. And you have to register. You register through Eventbrite. You can go to the Jordan website or Facebook page to get the details. If you have questions, you can call the either Jordan or Blue Couch, uh,
Off the blue couch.
off the Blue Couch at Gmail is the email address. But you can call this number at 612 807 5637. 612 807 5637. And at the end of the day, if you're not active in Jordan or in your neighborhood, now is the time. These are your instructions. These are your marching orders. Get involved with your neighbors in your neighborhood. Let your voice be the voice of progress, of reason, the voice of truth. Well, Ajwa, thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
You're
And
welcome.
if you're listening and you like this kind of conversation on social media, we want you to like it and to share it. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. These programs are being presented as summaries, daily summaries at KFAI on our podcast channel. You can get it wherever you get your favorite podcasts. They're also being presented as television programs on SPNN in St. Paul and on MTN television in Minneapolis. We're also writing stories about these interviews. So our objective is to use all of the tools all of the platforms at our disposal to tell our story. We believe that we have a right and an obligation to change the narrative. And the narrative that we create is a narrative in which we win. Does winning mean somebody has to lose? Absolutely not. Our version of winning is that everybody can win, and we create a place that recognizes the decency and the dignity of every human being, that recognizes our relationship to the environment, to animals, right, to plants, to minerals, the connectedness and the sacredness of all that exists. Well, we could go on, and we will. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. We'll be here tomorrow, as a matter of fact, at 1 o'clock. Join us then, Wednesday at 1 o'clock, Thursday at 1 o'clock, Friday with doctors and physicians, members of the National Medical Association, having these conversations. Be with us and share, like, and subscribe at YouTube. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Audra.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Take care. Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Bye-bye.